Good day. Today we're going to cover the COS2614 2023 Assessment 3 Question 1, and we're going to cover savings account. Okay. As you can see there, it's got the Q strings for M customer name, M account number, and M transaction list or Q list. Okay. And then we've also got our functions that help us to create the savings account and get it working. And so I'm going to proceed with that. And as per my other video, I'm adding a disclaimer. These videos are created for visual learners like myself in order to learn COS2614. Please do not use these videos to cheat, as I do not condone cheating, neither do I condone breaking any laws, rules, or regulations. Alright, so without further ado, let us try and get started. So this is the question here. Okay, I've already read through the question in the previous video, so I'm not going to read through it again. What I'm mostly going to do is open up my QT from what we've done previously, and you'll see I've got my transaction type here, and I've got my header and my CPP file defined. So I'm going to go File, New, and I want a C++, and I want a C++ class. I'm going to say Choose, and my class name is going to be Savings Account. Let me scroll this to the right. Should have want to be able to see this. So let's just scroll it like that and see. Okay, still not yet. Let's just get it there. Okay, that feels good. Yeah, now I can at least see it. There. So my class name is going to be Savings Account. Okay. I don't need it as a base class of anything. I'm happy with it to add these two files. Let's click on Next. Yes, I want it added to my Pro file. Click on Finish. So now if you go and have a look here under Pro, you can see that it's added Savings Account. Okay. Then we go to our heading, and now we're in our savings account, and so we want to be able to remember that we need to inherit from transaction. So we're going to add our hashtag include, and we're going to have our transaction H file, our header file. Okay. And we got our class savings account, public savings account, and as you can see, our savings account, our default constructor has two variables in it. So we're going to modify this default constructor to represent that. And so our first one is a Q string. Okay, and that is called name. And our next one is Q string of num. Okay, so our second function is called add transaction, and that is of type transaction, and it's called T. Okay, so but before I do that, I'm going to add a virtual or a destructor. So let me go see if I can remember how I did it. There we go. Okay. And our destructor we're going to call savings account. Okay. Then we've got add transaction, and that is not mentioned of any type, so we're going to just create a void, and we're going to say add transaction, and this is of type transaction. And T. Okay. The next one is of double. So the type is of double, and we're calling it a total transaction. Total transaction. And that one, double total transaction, we're going to create it as a const. The next one, it says total transaction cost. I wonder why I didn't see the cost part. Okay, but anyway, double transaction, and the next one's QString frequent transaction type. Okay, QString frequent transaction type. Okay, and that one we're also going to make a const. And the next one is a queue list, hey? Queue list of transactions. So queue list transaction transactions on a date, and that's a queue date. And that's also a const. Okay, and then finally we got QString to string, and we got const. Okay, then now we're going to add our member variables, but these are private. Okay, and those ones are QString, and the first one is customer name. Customer name. The next one is a QString data type of account number. Account number. And then finally we've got queue list, and we're saying transaction, and we're calling this a transaction list. Okay, so now we got our header defined. Okay, everything looks good in there. Now we're going to go and create our implementation file. So on the savings account we've got this, include savings account. We also want to include a QString list. QString list. Okay. And we got our savings account, and we need to define that as QString name. Yep. And QString number. then we've got our M customer name here, signed by name, and our M account number, and we are assigning that as num. And we've got our open and close brackets. And for our destructor, let's just add this. Okay, our destructor like that. Oops, what happened? Have I got too many of these things? Yeah. Okay, savings account, savings account. Okay. I'm going to create a queue delete all, and we're going to have M transaction list. There we go. The next one is going to be our void, and we want to copy this savings list, and we want to go to our savings account, and we're adding this got our M transaction list. We're using the append, and we're using the T. Okay, the next one is our double. Savings account, and we're wanting a total. So we initialize a double cost equals 0.0, and then we say for each transaction T, M transaction list. We say add our cost. Compute cost. Okay, and we return cost. Then our next one is of type QString. And we have that as a savings account, part of the savings account class. And we've got frequent transaction type. There we go. Okay, this one is quite a long one, but let's do it. Let's go for it. Deposit count equals 0. Okay. Withdrawal count equals 0. And withdrawal deposit and balance inquiry count equals 0. And then most count equals 0. So those are initialization variables that we've created to show the frequent transaction type. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is have QString, and we're going to declare these the D transaction is going to be our deposit. Okay, W transaction is going to be our withdrawal. And B transaction will be our balance inquiry. Then we're going to create a QString list and assign it result. Okay. And now we're going to create a for each loop. For each transaction T, M transaction list. We're going to say QString of type equals T and get type. Get type. And then we're going to say use an if statement, and we're going to say if the type is equal to D transaction, then we increment our D count, our 1. Okay. If our type, let's just type it out. Type is W transaction. Then our W count is incremented. And then if our type is the B transaction, then our B count is incremented. Okay. So once we've finished with that for each, then we're going to say our most count. Most count equals D count greater than W count difference of D count. W count. And then our most count equals B count greater than most count difference of B count most count. If most count equals D count, result append D transaction. If most count, let's just do it, most count is equal to W count, then result append W transaction. So I'm going to just copy that, change that to W. So I could actually just copy that whole thing and then use it for if most count is equal to B count, then result append B transaction. Okay, and then our final is we want to return result dot join comma. Okay, now this is where I think it would be good to go to AskCodi and ask all this information in AskCodi. So I'm going to do that. As you can see, it's saying this code defines a member function named frequent transaction type for the savings account class that returns a string containing the type of transaction that occurs most frequently in the list of transactions associated with the savings account object. The function starts by declaring and initializing a few variables: D count, W count, B count, and most count. These variables are used to keep track of the number of occurrences of each transaction type and to determine the transaction type that has the highest number of occurrences. Then the function declares and initializes 3 strings that represent the different types of transactions that can occur. After that, the function uses a for each loop to iterate through the list of transactions in mTransaction list. For each transaction, the function checks its type and updates the corresponding count variable accordingly. Once all the transactions have been counted, the function determines the value of most count by comparing the values of D count, W count, and B count. The most count variable will contain the highest count among the 3 transaction types. Finally, the function uses a series of if statements to add the transaction type or types that have the highest count to a queue-string list named result. The function joins the strings in the list with a comma and returns the resulting string. In summary, this function determines the most frequent type of transaction in a savings account object transaction list and returns its name as a string with the other most frequent transaction types, separated by comma. So I hope that has been informative. I'm going to continue going on to the rest of the code. But yeah, I thought that I would pause that and show you what was actually happening there, because it is quite a lengthy snippet of code, and yeah, I hope that you learned something from it. The next one we're going to move on to is the transaction on a date. Okay, so that's of a type queue list. Okay, and let me say transaction, and we're wanting that savings account, which is what we're after. Yeah. And then transactions on a date. There we go. Okay, and that is queue date and date. There we go. It already remembers it for us, which is quite nice. And now we can open and close our brackets. So we're creating our queue list. Transaction and pointer variable result. Okay, I think I'm going to just leave it together, and we're having a for each loop, and we're saying transaction star t, exactly what we've had before, this here, and transaction list. And transaction list, okay, and then we open it up there. We're saying if t get date and time, and we're only wanting to extract the date. Is equal to the date. Results dot append and the transaction. And then we obviously wanted to return our result. Okay. So that is our transaction on a date. Okay. So I think let's go also copy this, paste it in our AskCodi, and ask it to help us. What did I ask it? Please help me understand this code. Exactly that. Please help me understand this code. Oops. Okay. Thankfully it doesn't clear that. This is a function definition for transactions on a date in the savings account class. It takes a queue date parameter and returns a queue list of pointers to transaction objects. Here's what the function does. It declares a new queue list named result to store the transaction pointers for transactions that occurred on the given date. It uses a for each loop to iterate through each transaction pointer t in the mTransaction list member variable of the savings account object. For each transaction T, it gets the date and time, as in QDateTime object, using tGetDateTime, and then extracts the date component using the date function. If the extracted date is the same as the date parameter passed to the function, it means the transaction occurred on that date. So the transaction pointer T is appended to the result using the append function. Once the loop is finished, result contains all the transaction pointers for transactions that occurred on the given date, and it returned from the function as the result. Okay, so I hope that that's been a bit more of a clearer instruction and understanding of what's happening there. All right, and then finally we're going to create our toString. Okay, so this is our QString, and we're wanting a savings account. Okay, it's in our savings account class, and we're using the toString, and the toString contains a const at the end of it. Okay, so now we got our QString result, which equals QString customer name and our first what's its name, argument, yeah, or our first placeholder, account number. Okay, so we mustn't take this out yet. So account number, we're making it one long string, and our second placeholder value, okay, and \n. Now we finished with our string. Then we're going to add our arguments, and the first one is going to be m customer name, okay, and the second one is going to be, our second argument is the account number, so m underscore account number, okay, and we end that off with an apostrophe there, or semicolon I should say, not apostrophe, semicolon. Then we're creating a for each loop, and we're saying transaction of pointer type T, and we're putting it in our M transaction list. Okay. Yeah. And while it's scrolling through, we want it to append t.toString, toString, okay, and we're also going to add result append, and we're going to add a \n for a new line. Okay, then after that we want to return our result. Okay, I don't think that one is too difficult, so yeah, you can use whatever tool you feel you want to learn more about that one, but maybe I should actually just do it anyway. Let's go and do it. since we're doing all the others. This was function on transaction on a date. So yeah, please help me understand this code. Alright, let's go send. This is a member function for the savings account class that returns a QString object representing the object state. Here's what the function does. It declares a new QString variable named result and initializes it to a string containing the customer's name and account number. The argument function is used to insert values for %1 and %2 using the values of the M customer name and M account number member variables. It uses a for each loop to iterate over each transaction pointer T in the M transaction list member variable of the savings account object. For each transaction T, it calls the toString function on T to get a QString representation of the transaction and appends it to the result string using the append function. Finally, the function returns the result string. This method returns a concatenation of the customer's name and an account number with a list of all transactions that have occurred on the account, with each transaction on a new line. This is useful for displaying the account information in a human-readable format. Alright, so I believe that is the last part of the function for savings account. I'm not doing any main transactions at the moment or main implementations. You can use the information here and try and adjust the main function so that you can get it working. I hope this video has been helpful and informative. Thank you for watching, and all the best to all my visual learners and those that are enjoying these videos. Thank you and goodbye.